So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lorraine Cunningham, and I'd like to welcome everyone to TransLink's open board meeting. I'd also like to welcome those who are live streaming today on either Facebook or Twitter. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to acknowledge that TransLink operates throughout the traditional territories of the Lower Mainland Coast Salish peoples, and specifically that this meeting is being held in the traditional territory of the Kikite First Nations. The next thing I wanted to talk about for a moment is safety. We take the safety of our customers, employees, and public very seriously. And at this time, I'd like to remind you of all the emergency exits. The nearest emergency exit is across the hall. In the event of an alarm, please exit in an orderly fashion and meet at the muster station along the construction fence at the side of the building facing the Sapperton station. For those using mobility devices, please do not use the elevator, but gather in the vicinity of the stairwell and enter the safe refuge area. One of our floor wardens will report your location to the fire department so they can prioritize your safe exit from the building. And in the event of an earthquake, as we all know, you're supposed to drop, cover, and hold until the shaking has stopped. So with that, I wanted to just talk about our new board makeup because I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank 3 people who are here with us today and their terms finish at the end of the month. Vancouver Mayor Gregor Robertson, Surrey Mayor Linda Hepner, and Marcella Sell, all who've been on the board. And on behalf of the board, I would like to say thank you for your leadership and vision that you've brought to our group. We have all enjoyed working with you, and we are going to miss you. So I'd also like to acknowledge that we have 3 new board members joining us beginning in the new year. Burnaby Mayor Derek Corrigan, who was elected Chair of the Mayor's Council last week. District of Vancouver Mayor Richard Walton, who was elected Vice Chair of the Mayor's Council last week. And as most of you know, the Chair and Vice Chair of the Mayor's Council sit on the TransLink Board of Directors. So in January, we will have a new makeup from the Mayor's Council. And then I'd also like to welcome Karen Horcher, who is joining us and starting in January. And Karen is in the audience here to the left, and she will be our 3rd new board member. So we'll look forward to working with everyone in the year ahead. So on that, I would like to now move to the the adoption of the agenda. So everyone has the agenda in front of them. There is one additional item that I'd like to add to the agenda as 4.2, and that is a report on the Joint Regional Mobility Pricing Steering Committee. And so we'll be making a report in that section 4.2. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Thank you, Larry. And seconded, Marcella, thank you. And all in favor of the agenda? Thank you very much. So we have minutes from September 28th in front of you, and those you've all seen and had an opportunity to review in advance of the meeting. And can I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Thank you, Murray. And seconded, Jim. And all in favor? Thank you. So public delegations is the next item on the agenda. We have received a information package about the response to all the public delegations from our previous meeting, and they're provided to you in your package. In addition, there's a written submission from the last meeting and another one from this meeting, and responses have been provided to those written submissions. So at this point, I'd like to call upon the first member of our public delegation that has requested an opportunity to speak to the board, and that's James DeBrune. Sorry if I didn't pronounce your last name properly. Is James here? Okay, well, we'll move on to the next individual, and if James does come, then I'll call at the end of the cycle. So the next gentleman is David Deng. All right, I'll do the same thing with David then. Obviously, he's maybe caught in his transit ride. Mark Beeching. Is Mark here? Welcome, Mark. That's right. Any one of those seats is great. And just when you're going to speak, if you could just make sure the microphone is turned on. Okay. Welcome, Mark. There's a red light on the front. So if you push the talk button, the red light comes on. Thank you.
As said, I'm Mark Beeching. I'm a long-term worker at HandyDart and been here since the inception of HandyDart, and I have some concerns that I'd like to raise with you. I'd like to speak to you regarding the recent proposal to award the RFP for HandyDart to First Bus Group. This is not the first time that a new provider has been proposed to TransLink. I have worked in HandyDart since 1980, and I have seen many changes and seen many management companies come and go. Each time TransLink hoped for improvements to custom transit in Vancouver. Standardization and training have improved immeasurably. In 2009, when MVT arrived, I had great hopes to see a regional system that provided seniors and disabled people equality in public transit. Sadly, the incoming company didn't recognize the workforce, their guaranteed hours, benefits, pensions, or seniority, culminating in a bitter strike. Until that time, the ridership had never suffered from a prolonged labor interruption. MVT gave us verbal assurances to try to placate the workforce. So far, I have seen nothing but similar verbal assurances from the incoming company. When profit is the driving force for any corporation, the first step in maximizing profits is to reduce cost of labor and training. No employee management company who has operated HandyDart has been able to effect real change. When soaring denials reared their head, TransLink corrected that by changing the term denial to unaccommodated standbys. TransLink intentionally changed the outcome of a comparator by leaving quality of service out of that report. It is understandable that TransLink has to make every penny count, but why then do they intentionally slant their report with such an important omission, negating the fact that profit margins could be better spent in service? Change came when the provincial government froze HandyDart funding for 8 years. Change comes every day from TransLink staff that set parameters on the computer system without understanding by having input from workers doing the job. In the proposal to award the RFP, accountability is a major player. Winning a contract that has penalties from not meeting performance quotas is not accountability. For disabled people and seniors, the bar is set by on-time performance. Operating companies can maintain time performance quotas while ignoring the fact that passengers may arrive over an hour before their programs start, be on the bus for over an hour and a half, and arrive at their appointments late, often a few minutes prior to their return ride. Apparently, by TransLink standards, either Coast Mountain, who does not operate with these artificial measures of service, is either unaccountable, or disabled people and seniors do not receive the same treatment as those taking conventional transit. Recently, a top-ranking official from transit told a HandyDart user that he was disappointed that the HandyDart Riders Alliance was filing a human rights case. What choice do riders have when they have not been given the same consideration as able-bodied riders? Contracting out the conventional bus system to for-profit companies or to taxis would end in mass revolt, yet this is exactly the decision in front of you today. I would hope that you would consider that this decision will not solve the ongoing deficiencies in HandyDart, no matter what the results today. I would ask you, the board, to ensure the public that there will be continuity of service, labor force, and training. I hope that TransLink will recognize HandyDart as a societal necessity rather than a financial burden. Public transit for people with disabilities and seniors should not be auctioned off to the lowest bidder. Today you have an opportunity to make real change by cutting through the layers of unnecessary bureaucracy and make custom transit in Vancouver truly accountable by bringing HandyDart in-house. And if I have just an extra couple minutes, Bet Tuason is a rider who is on dialysis, on end-stage dialysis, and I've been asked to read this. Do I have it's a minute. Okay. So this is from Bet Tuason, and I was asked to read this. To my Facebook friends I regard as family. You may have noticed how passionate I am with the issue of HandyDart. Like the many others that depend on this transportation service, we are fortunate to have a system that is our lifeline to a life-saving daily procedure. Yes, I suffer from end-stage kidney disease, undergoing dialysis and needing a life-saving transplant. My living is dedicated to hospital, clinics, and various medical appointments, with HandyDart as my main mode of getting there. For those of you who are interested to know why this service, many of us users, seniors, youth, have varied forms of mental, cognitive, physical challenges where taking a regular bus is a challenge. Several years ago, many amongst these users has communicated to TransLink that many issues that they were experiencing up to the present. The contractors who were then in charge provide the service are responsible, so we were told. With the recent announcement by TransLink that they have identified a possible contractor who has presented significantly lower cost of operation, let us all stop there. Many of us, through our advocates, have suggested that we could better serve this segment of public transportation user to operate this service directly in-house, avoiding many, if not all, of the issues that have plagued the operation. Our advocate presented options and feedbacks to the betterment of delivery of this essential public service. So far, nothing. Our seniors and vulnerable citizens deserved an accessible, available, and affordable public transportation. Are we asking too much? A decision is about to be finalized at the TransLink Mayor's Council meeting tomorrow, December 14th, 2017. Please call me, email me, Twitter your MLA, request that they make the appropriate decision for our citizens, that they serve and present. Cut our rides, cut short our lives. Remember us. I thank you for that extra time.
Thank you very much, Mark, and please extend our thanks to Beth for her submission as well.
Beth, yeah.
Beth? Yes.
Yeah,
yes. Oh, Beth. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't actually mention about the clock here. Each individual that has requested to speak is provided with approximately 5 minutes, and so Gigi sets the timer just to help with you managing your time. So we'll be careful to do that for everybody from this point on. The next person is Albert Millennials. If I could ask Albert to come up. Now, Albert submitted his presentation ahead of time, and that was sent to all the board members last night, Albert. So everyone's had an opportunity to review that before you, just so you know, so before you start your presentation.
Thank you. I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
The first thing I want to make sure you understand, the person who speaks for the union is Tyler Feldbill, the vice president who will be speaking after me. I'm speaking based on my personal experience. The HandyDart Riders Alliance and the Amalgamated Transit Union want the RFP process put on hold. You'll get the exact statements from them, but I'm paraphrasing them. I belong to both, but I write out of my personal experience. Putting the process on hold is not likely. You do not have the power of a prince to stop a democratic process. But I assume that this is not a rubber stamp process and that the final decision has yet to be made. The interim solution. I suggest that for the immediate future, you focus on problem solving within the existing HandyDart system and extend the MVT contract by at least 2 years after June of 2018. Here are a few suggestions for a progressive next step, no matter who you choose. Take all the present crew. This should mean that all those under the collective agreement and at least the frontline manager should be kept. Their experience is important to the continuity. The in-house option, 2 versions. The HandyDart Riders Alliance has proposed that HandyDart be taken in-house, but didn't define what that means. Being in the Department of Coast would be a disaster. Customer service. It is laudable that TransLink wishes to be more involved, but frontline customer service needs to be controlled directly by the contractor, so customer service should be returned to the contractor. Mr. Desmond explained to me the logic of that. Logic is sound, but you have to have the right titles on the different phone lines, and most people think customer service is today's problem. So you need to have that at the contractor, and then have, oh, in my next line, my next written line. Ongoing problems in customer service needs to be inside Coast or TransLink, but it should have a descriptive name like ongoing problems, because TransLink should be dealing with the big issues. Computer. The software is controlled directly by TransLink. I think Mart mentioned that. The person in charge of the software needs to be in the same building as the dispatchers and bookers. The speeds need to be adjusted on a regular basis based on daily experience. Rider input, and this is probably my biggest statement. A major step forward would be an empowered users committee to review new equipment and new methods. You have been trying to screen the passengers to reduce the strain on the system. Why not have the passengers review the equipment and the processes? If you build a more accessible conventional system, they will use it. My final statement again is personal. When I work for a company, I apply my best efforts to do and also to improve the work. I will do the same for First if they get the contract. And here's my slogan of the day. If you remove MVT now, you're trading okay for maybe. Let's go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Albert. Okay, our next presenter is Tyler Felbell. Welcome, Tyler.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you. Okay, I think as Albert mentioned, I'm the acting president right now for the Amalgamated Transit Union, representing the drivers, office and maintenance workers, and I've been a driver myself for 27 years. And I'm here to ask you to postpone awarding the contract for HandyDart and reconsider bringing the service in-house. We're not satisfied that an unbiased review of that was done during the customer review, and we've not seen the evidence that bringing the service in-house would be more expensive due to high labor costs. We've not seen any of the comparators that were used in the study and to reach your conclusion. Our driver's compensation is currently similar to the community shuttles, and there's no reason to assume it will increase dramatically just because the service is taken in-house. When was the profit to the contractors even taken into account? Those are tax dollars that could be put back into the service. Your decision on the RFP today will have a long-term effect on our citizens with mobility challenges who rely on this important service to participate in society and live their lives. Your decision should not be based on some political ideology that assumes contracting out is always the best option. TransLink ultimately has a responsibility to provide the service and has a lot of influence over the policies and procedures. For example, as has already been mentioned, you set the estimated speeds for the computer scheduling system, which often creates unrealistic and basically impossible travel times for the trips. You supply the vehicles and the infrastructure, and HandyDart has always been treated like a poor cousin in the transit system. We can't even find appropriate yards for some of the depots. So TransLink should start to take accountability themselves instead of having a contractor as a middleman to take the blame when things go poorly. You could form a subsidiary and hire some managers with the necessary expertise to run it yourselves. The quality of the service relies on maintaining a well-trained, experienced, stable workforce. Whenever the operating contract is changed, it creates a lot of anxiety and uncertainty and disruption for the workers. It's unfair to these dedicated long-term employees and can have a detrimental effect on the service to our passengers as well. Experiments with using more taxis to provide this service have proven to be a failure and shown up a lot of the problems with their reliability, availability, and other complaints from passengers. HandyDart deserves to be a permanent subsidiary of TransLink. However, if you do choose to continue contracting out, the workers should have full successorship rights and continuity of employment. I understand that First Canada is a large, experienced contractor, and I am grateful they've said they will offer preferred hiring for the existing employees, as well as recognize our union and current collective agreement. I'm hopeful that they will treat the workers fairly and be committed to providing excellent service to our passengers. I'm sure everyone wants a smooth transition, whatever you decide, But again, the responsibility for providing the service is ultimately with TransLink. Our union did not feel like our participation and input was particularly welcome during the custom transit review, and last week your CEO did not even have the courtesy to tell the union that there would be an announcement on the RFP on the Friday afternoon. Our members enjoy helping people, and we take pride in providing the best service we can. Going forward, I hope there will be better communication and consideration of the union and workers providing this important service. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. And I apologize, Kevin and I were just discussing, Kevin's going to make some comments when we start to deliberate on this topic. So he was just asking whether he wanted me to, or whether I wanted him to speak now or later. So we've agreed that he's going to speak later. So I apologize for speaking in and discussing that during your presentation.
That's okay.
Okay.
Just caught my breath.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Tyler. Okay, our next presenter is Daryl Dela Cruz. Welcome, Daryl.
Good afternoon to everyone on this board, of course, and to Mr. Desmond, to all the mayors present. Today I'm here to submit a short report that I've crafted together. I regret to inform you that I currently only have one paper copy available, but I will of course be sending this by email as well as making it available on my website. Today I don't represent any particular campaign or transit-related citizens group. I actually just come as myself. And I just wanted to kind of move this forward, see if I can put a new transit solution for Metro Vancouver on the map. I have been doing some research on new transit technologies recently, and I've wanted to ask the question of how do we improve our transit corridors, and when I say this I mean our surface corridors. We do have one of the most heavily used transit networks in North America, and this is happening on both our rapid transit and our surface bus routes. Typically when we look at improving surface bus routes, and I know that TransLink is extensively looking into this, I've been reading the reports on the proposed improvements to the B-line standard. We look at two potential technologies so far. I know we've been looking at expanded B-line service in some corridors throughout the region. We've looked at light rail as technology for surface corridors. And between these two, I've noticed, of course, that they're both technologies have their pros, but they also have their limitations. Obviously, we're aware that with B-lines, there's a capacity constraint, and with light rail projects, of course, it can be very costly. These are big rapid transit projects. They take time to, of course, set up and serve our region. I've been looking at the need for a versatile, low-cost solution, and I have found this solution in trackless train technology. Trackless train technology, what I'm putting forward, I would quote Councillor Andrew Knack from the City of Edmonton. He described it as a possible perfect hybrid between bus rapid transit and light rail transit. Trackless train technology, you might have heard of places in the world that have actually looked at these technologies. You might be familiar with the new application that comes from China by CRRC Corporation, and this is a demonstration project by the largest rail rolling stock manufacturer in the world. I've been looking at additional places in the world that have been adopting these technologies. I actually discovered that the city of Brisbane, Australia, has adopted an extensive proposal for trackless train technology. They were planning a standard metro rail system using rail technology. What they found apparently is that when converting it to a trackless train technology, they would see savings of up to 500 million in capital costs. And they expanded their proposal so that the system would now have 2 metro lines instead of 1. This is an incredible step forward for Brisbane, which is integrating this with an extensive BRT network. I guess to summarize, the main components of trackless train technology are, of course, the use of expanded transit vehicles. We've seen bi-articulated buses. These are buses that are longer than our standard 18-meter articulated buses. They can be up to 24 to 32 meters long, and they increase capacity so that buses can accommodate up to 300 passengers per vehicle. These are commonly used in cities in Europe, South America, and China. In Canada, York Region's Viva has actually looked at this technology, and they built their system to accommodate it in the future. Other components include vehicle guidance. You have magnetic sensors or painted virtual tracks. They allow for level docking at stations, they allow for longer vehicles, and you can also integrate high-quality stations with level platforms and screen doors. We've seen these systems in conventional systems. I know that even Kelowna has level boarding on their bus system, which is a conventional system. The advantages are clear. Trackless train technology offers a higher capacity than conventional BRT, lower infrastructure costs compared to LRT. You can phase in this infrastructure and mitigate community impacts. It's a high-quality ride experience. There are lower costs to build out, and it's faster to set up. I've included 2 potential applications in our region in this report. I've actually looked at the Arbutus corridor. I understand the City of Vancouver has plans to put light rail on this corridor, and I acknowledge this is a great idea, actually. But when I looked at the potential for trackless train technology, I noticed that the current proposal by the City of Vancouver doesn't have a direct downtown route, and if we want to use this as a relief line for the Candle Line, that might have an implication. I do intend to present on this further to the City of Vancouver. I guess this is the first place where I'm going to try to put this technology on the map. But in any case, I feel like there's considerable potential for this technology in our region. Someone's going to have to bring it up at some point, and I figure that I can put the research together and make something of it.
Thank you very much, Daryl. Appreciate that. So I'm just going to thank you, and we'll look forward to receiving your information. Okay, Linda.
Thanks, Madam Chair. It's interesting because Mr. Desmond will recall that I did bring this up and sent to him a couple of links in terms of what the future of transportation could look like in the region. I'm not so certain, and perhaps at some point we could have a further report on this, but I'm not so certain it is as advanced as it needs to be currently. My understanding is that the capacity is at about 43 kilometers an hour is the top speed, and it needs such a high capacitor in terms of gathering the power at about 10 minutes or so for wherever the stops are. But is it something that autonomous vehicles in the future, and not unlike buses, it looks like a train, it's a great technology. Mr. Desmond and I were kind of excited about talking about what the future could look like. I'm not sure we're quite ready for it yet, and what the examples around the world are, but I do believe as we go into what potentially could be available in our system within the future, autonomous certainly comes to mind.
Yeah, we absolutely, would continue to look at any and all new emerging technologies. I appreciate Mr. Dela Cruz's report. We'll take a look at that. Thank you. But I think in terms of the autonomous nature of it, that's still a bit of an emerging technology, at least in North America. And I think that's coming. We know that autonomy is coming, and there are a lot of issues and regulatory matters that have to be worked out to bring autonomy. But how that fits into future transit applications, absolutely, we should be looking at that and many others.
Thank you. So just to circle back to the beginning, has James De Bruyn arrived? All right, or David Deng? Okay. So that then completes the public presentations or the list of presenters for our meeting. So I'm going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the executive reports. And the first report is from our CEO, Kevin, and he's got some slides, and now he's got his tool that he needs. Okay, so take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and folks in the audience. Good afternoon. So, as I was thinking about my CEO report for this board meeting, it occurred to me it is the last board meeting of the year, and it would be a good opportunity to take stock of what we've accomplished at TransLink and some of the challenges going forward. And later this afternoon, the board will be contemplating approval of our 2018 budget. So I think it's a good a launching point, really, for all the things that we have to do and that we expect to do next year. So while this is perhaps looking backwards a little bit on the year in review, very much forms the platform for what it is that we at TransLink want to accomplish next year as well. So a few slides, a lot of information in the context of the slides. And the first slide that I wanted to put forward really most importantly is improving service for all of our customers in all modes of our system. We've been reporting here and in the media over the months that we've been seeing extremely strong demand and unusually strong demand compared to our North American peers for our transit service. And we've been able to put out a lot of new transit service in 2017, and in fact, it's the largest improvement in service since at least the Canada Line startup a number of years ago. And on the bus side, it's probably the largest single-year increase in bus service in TransLink's history. You see the ridership increase so far this year at about 6%, a little bit over 6%, driven very much by a strong economy, driven in part by high fuel prices, driven by fares that have not kept pace with inflation, so that the fares have been, in that sense, a good value for money. The service improvements, a couple of weeks ago, we commemorated the year one of the Evergreen line, and some pretty astonishing numbers. Not only is the Evergreen line ridership by up 13% since it was launched about a year ago, but more importantly, total transit ridership in the Tri-Cities is up 25% so far this year during the weekdays, 50% on weekends. And that really is a combination not only of the game-changing Evergreen line itself, but the supportive bus services. So my hat's off to our planning team and CNBC for really thinking through, working very closely with the Tri-City communities on reorienting the bus system to help feed and support the Evergreen investment. And in fact, on ridership, we are expecting sometime next week our 400 millionth boarding of the year, which is a nice new threshold for TransLink. We will end the years with record ridership, and sometime next week we'll have our 400 millionth boarding. Ridership is growing on virtually all of our modes. And that's been fueled, as I said, by the service increases. You can see on the slide the service increases most prominently on rail, and I'm very proud that our colleagues at BCRTC and at Canada Line were able to implement the rail service increases within weeks of the Mayor's Council in this body approving phase one of the investment plan. And in fact, I believe on January 6th, we implemented the first round of rail increase, 17% increase in service over all three lines. C-Bus service hours, and we improved service on C-Bus twice during the course of the year, about a 7% increase. Handy Dart, very, very importantly, that was front-loaded in terms of an investment program in the Mayor's plan in recognition of the needs of our very important Handy Dart customers, a 5% increase in the availability of trips, and probably the largest in terms of resources and impact in the system, 5% increase in bus service hours. And I'm proud to say the folks within this organization who made that happen allowed us to deliver on the promises that we made to the mayors, to this board, and to the general public. And in fact, next week we'll be announcing the next round of bus service increases that will be implemented in January, just a few weeks away, as we continue to address trips, crowding on trips throughout the region. I should also point out, notably during this year, we brought transit service to 3 communities south of the Fraser River that did not before have transit service, in Clayton Heights, Morgan Creek, and Silver Valley. We also reached a milestone on Compass this summer on August 23rd. We had our billionth tap in our Compass system. Compass is still a fairly new product in this region, really less than 2 years of full implementation, but it's working very much for us, and it's really beginning to generate the data that our planners and our operations folks have so much craved to understand how we can best operate and maintain and manage the system. So, the service on the street, service on the rails is of course very important to customer satisfaction and market development. But the information that we provide to our customers is just as important in so many respects. That the ability for us to communicate what's going on in the system to our customers. So I want to report on some progress in that area, particularly as we step up these customer communications. We're very active on social media. 167,000 followers on Twitter, something like 30,000 followers on Facebook. 73,000 people mentioned TransLink on Twitter during the course of the year. 50,000 tweets during the course of the year to our customers. Increasingly in this ever-changing and fast progressing world of social media, these are the channels through which we need to have the two-way communication, frankly, with our customers. Not only us pushing out service information, but also getting very quick instant feedback from our customers as well. An area that we need to improve upon is our transit alerts. We've made some progress during the course of the year, and in fact, over the next 2 years, we'll continue to make progress in our alert system. On August 31st, we had a true SMS implementation, meaning that folks could receive their alerts from any mobile carrier. That was really holding back our ability to reach as many customers as possible. And as of right now, we have just shy of 26,000 customers that are signed up for alerts. I frankly think that should be higher. We have something like 500,000 individuals who ride our transit system during the course of the year, and I think we can do better than 26,000 subscribers to alerts, notwithstanding the fact that with Twitter and the other social media channels, that's also a very appealing way to get information. We also, at the end of September, we improved our transit alert page to make it easier for people to access that information through a redesigned desktop and mobile alert page. Total page views year to date, about 1.2 million on the transit alert side. So those are some of our metrics just in terms of how people are using, our customers are using our systems, and it will continue to be a major area of emphasis in our customer service program. Customs transit service delivery, I'm not going to speak much to that now. We're going to get to that shortly with some presentations for Jeff Cross, but we're very happy to bring to this body in March of this year the results of the advisory committee that supported and helped us come up with 19 recommendations to continue to improve our very important handy-dart service, with 7 of the 19 recommendations implemented to date and progress being made on the rest, and we'll come back to that later in the program today. Wireless connectivity in the system, very, very important. Earlier this year, wireless cellular availability at the Columbia Station in the tunnel in the New Westminster area went live, and very soon, hopefully in a matter of days, the Burquitlam Tunnel and the Evergreen Extension will also be turned on for cellular coverage, which would make the entire system live for cellular. And our commercial and IT folks are always looking for new opportunities to provide internet and cellular access in the system, and hopefully to also do that in partnership to develop some revenue opportunities for TransLink and our program. We also want to be open to and able to pursue innovations at TransLink. That's really very important. Very important, really, to the future, even as the discussion a few minutes ago about different advances on propulsion and navigation systems on the streets. So far this year, a variety of different projects on the bus side. We've talked about the electric bus demonstration program this last summer. We demonstrated for a couple of months an overnight base charge system through one of the vendors in our to make some progress in understanding how battery-powered, low-emission, zero-emission buses could be introduced into our region. Earlier this year as well, we obtained approval from Metro Vancouver to apply gas tax to a $6.8 million program to introduce 4 fast-charge electric buses into our system. We've signed deals with Cutric and Natural Resources Canada, which is contributing $1.2 million of the $6.8 million budget. We are finalizing contracts with the providers of the vehicles, and we expect to have the 4 fast charge vehicles with 2 charge stations operational in about a year, a little bit more than a year. Those buses will operate on the Route 100 between Vancouver and New Westminster. We've gotten started on a low carbon fleet strategy, which we expect to deliver back to this board and the Mayor's Council hopefully in the second quarter of next year, which I believe will chart out the course for the next generation of the fleet that we will be bringing on to this organization. With a great deal of fanfare, we've talked about the double-decker buses. We had a nice ceremony downstairs in front of our offices a number of weeks ago. The pilot started a few weeks ago. I've been hearing very, very good feedback for customers. We're operating 2 double-deckers. They'll be operating still for a number of weeks going forward. With that great feedback, both from customers as well as our employees at Coast Mountain Bus, in terms of the drivers, the mechanics, and so forth, I think there's a lot of enthusiasm. I'm hoping we can issue a request for proposals to bring on our first permanent fleet of double-decker buses by the first quarter, issue the RFP by Q1 next year, and then within a year, possibly even sooner, see the first of these double-deckers. These buses provide greater capacity, greater comfort for our customers, and I think actually a little bit of fun on the buses as well. And it's kind of nice to think if you can get on a transit system and actually put a smile on your face and have some fun. Tire socks. What's a tire sock? Well, that's one of the things that CMBC is beginning to test this year to see once if it snows, and when it snows, we'll have a better ability to manage on the streets. If and when it snows, we'll be testing out those tire socks on Burnaby Mountain and see if we can continue to provide service to SFU. That would be great. Which during snowy periods is always very difficult. CNBC tested the tire socks up on Mount Seymour a few weeks ago when there was enough snow on the street. It's very impressive, actually, the traction that the tire socks brought as opposed to the regular tires. So Dan, we're looking forward to at some point, although not that we're looking forward for it to snow here, but at some point to see if those tire socks have a future for us. We've talked about a van pool program. We've entered into an agreement with Moto, and we are pursuing implementing the first of our van pools with C-SPAN on the North Shore. And we're beginning to identify other companies, other businesses in the region, which would be very good targets for van pool, where the bus service is not as convenient or as available, but we can provide other mobility options for people going to and from their place of business. Speaking of Moto, in June, we made it easier to connect with car sharing at 6 Metro Vancouver, at 6 SkyTrain stations in the region. A way to improve our ability to provide that first mile, last mile connection at the station. So I see that as a continuing improvement in the availability of our system. Something that we're really proud of, and that's what the image on the screen. Last week, December 4th, we held a new mobility forum all day downtown. Some 100 industry experts, technology folks, academics, government people, to explore with us solutions for a better transportation future. So what is new mobility? We believe it's the convergence of related transportation trends towards greater integration, personalization, automation, connectivity, electrification, and sharing. The world is fast changing, and these types of technologies are coming very quickly. And as a public transit agency, it's often difficult for us to address new ideas and new technologies, perhaps as quickly or as agilely as private sector can. So this new mobility forum is a way for us to begin to find a way to leverage the expertise, the energy, the entrepreneurial spirit of the private sector. And we will hopefully launch in the weeks ahead, perhaps in January, is what we're targeting, a TransLink Tomorrow portal. And that portal will house 3 collaboration tools: Mobility Solutions Matchmaker, which would be a place to crowdsource ideas with potential partners; a demonstration program where interested parties can gain access to TransLink hardware and software systems to test potential products that we might find really useful, that could really add value to our program going forward. And then lastly, an open innovation call, like unsolicited proposals. Other public sector organizations, we know that Los Angeles MTA is very much pushing unsolicited proposals. This is a place to bring those unsolicited proposals forward, to see what's out there that we don't even know about going forward, and maybe we can find ways to accelerate those innovations. So look for our TransLink Tomorrow portal in the weeks ahead. We've made some good progress on our open payments, our credit card and mobile payments program for the Compass program. That's gone a little more slowly than I was hoping. I was hoping we'd actually be able to launch that by the end of this year. We are in testing with Cubic and other partners. There have been some somewhat complicating issues, but we are confident that we'll be able to launch the credit card and mobile payment program as early as the second quarter next year. It would be, we'll probably have about a 3-month public education and marketing campaign getting ready for that. We've been reaching out to other transit agencies in the world, actually, that have had experience with rolling out mobile payments, and we want to make sure we do it very well. So look for that. I think that's a really, really important advance that we're going to be making here in our region. We will be among the world leaders, in fact, in our capability for people to use something other than their chip card to gain access to our system. Sort of moving into a different realm, we had a very, very active capital program in 2017, focused primarily on maintaining our assets in a state of good repair and building up a industry best practice asset management program, and continuing to pursue capacity increases in the system. As for capacity improvements, the Expo Line station upgrades, first for all of our customers at the stations where there's been construction. We appreciate your patience around the construction zone, but at the end of the day, the resulting stations I think are going to be far, far more comfortable. They're going to have better access, vertical and horizontal access within the stations. Metrotown Station, we opened up new escalators and elevator. This is an image from the Metrotown West Station House that we opened up a few months ago, as well as new fare gates and ticket vending machines. We are hoping that the Metrotown station will be completed by the early second quarter, I believe, Sandy, of next year. So we're making good progress. On the Commercial Broadway station, again, a lot of construction going on. A major milestone happened a number of weeks ago where we actually had to close off Broadway during the course of 2 successive weekends to put the new overpass in place, pedestrian overpass in place. But that's a signal of the progress we're making. Again, that station we expect to be completed by mid-year of next year. It's been delayed a little bit. We had some issues with the right-of-way with CN Railroad. Joyce Collingwood Station, the East Station House, opened up again with additional vertical circulation in early October. So it's a beautiful space, and I think it's, again, a signal of the types of capacity improvements we need to be making. And finally, we broke ground at the Surrey Central Station in April this year. Very, very active year on fleet renewal, whether it's being in a place to retire aged buses or bring on expansion fleet as well. On the C-Bus side, we've already started building our new C-Bus. That vessel should be here by the end of next year and operational by the first quarter of 2019 expected. On SkyTrain, very active. We've now ordered and have committed contracts for 56 additional SkyTrain cars, the first of which should be arriving about this time next year. And we've very recently entered into the contract for the additional Canada Line cars. Those vehicles we expect here in 2020. On the bus side, very, very active. We appreciate the support we've received from Metro Vancouver on gas tax to procure more vehicles, 181 replacement buses, 94 expansion buses. Those are the buses we need to get on the road to support the mayor's plan increase. Most of those buses that we are purchasing are either hybrid, diesel-electric hybrid, or CNG buses. Handy Dart, 75 vehicles, of which 13, or I'm sorry, Handy Dart is 88, of which 13 are expansion vehicles. Really, really important. Those 13 expansion vehicles will be here next month. Very important to help us deal with the peak period on Handy Dart, which I think has been one of the challenges, frankly, in providing better service for our Handy Dart customers, and community shuttle additional vehicles as well. We've continued to make very good progress on the Broadway and Surrey Rapid Transit projects. We delivered our business cases to the province. They are now looking at those business cases, and those are fundamental to ultimately reaching all the agreements with the provincial government to advance those two projects. In the state of good repair, I'm not going to dwell on that because Vivian King will speak to this a little bit in her presentation primarily on the rail side. A lot of emphasis on projects to maintain a state of good repair and renew assets. Patello Bridge, again, we submitted our business case to the province in early September. They are looking at that business case, and we are eager to finally get an arrangement with the province where we can move forward with the project. I would expect over the next number of weeks to be in a position to announce how Patello Bridge will advance. And a couple of other things I think very important. The major road network funding. We had a nice announcement on the North Shore with Mayors Masato and Walton. We contributed almost $42 million for the operation and maintenance and rehabilitation programs, and another $23 million for other projects, including new investments in walking and cycling. And then finally, our asset management program. It's not sexy. It's not something we talk about in public much. We talk a lot in our committees. It's a major part of our program, and some of the budget money in 2018 is actually to advance our internal asset maintenance program. Most importantly, to have TransLink's first ever 10-year asset renewal program. Finances and people. Again, you will have the budget in front of you later this afternoon, but I can testify that we have very, very sound finances here at TransLink. Most importantly, our AA credit rating has been so very, very important to our ability to finance capital projects going forward, and that underscores how strong our finances are. I think Kathy McClay, who recently retired as our CFO and EVP, and Chris Dacre, our current acting CFO, have done a fabulous job, I think, of looking after the finances of this organization to make sure that we can advance the programs that our customers and taxpayers want. Also manifested in a very, very successful bond issuance. A number of weeks ago, we sold $200 million in bonds, and there was a lot of interest in that bond sale. I want to give a hats off to our HR folks and the trainers at Coast Mountain Bus. We've hired so far this year over 500 operators, and we couldn't have added that record amount of bus service so far this year without that happening, let alone the other folks that they've had to hire to bring on to help us advance the expansion program. Employee engagement initiatives are active in all of the subsidiaries in BCRTC, Coast Mountain Bus, and TransLink, following up on our most recent employee survey. TransLink, CNBC, and BCRT are following a variety of different projects with employees around the areas of training, communications within employee groups, and employee recognition. And finally, something I'm pretty proud of, and Derek Lee, our internal auditor and performance manager, has really been pushing lean practices, continuous improvement practices throughout the organization. We implemented a Lean Academy across the enterprise this year. Some 300 staff across the enterprise have already attended a Lean 101 program, and every one of those training classes has been sold out. There's a tremendous amount of interest going forward. Over 40 process improvement projects have been completed so far, and we are reporting that out with an internal newsletter. Very important to me is public interaction and accountability. This is a big deal to me, is the responsiveness of this organization to the public, being accountable to the public, being transparent to the public, and being out in the public as much as we can. At the beginning of this year, we launched our Accountability Center with 33 key indicators. In fact, during the course of the year, in part guided by the custom transit review process, we added a few indicators for HandyDart. And when Vivian King is up shortly, she'll be talking about a new indicator that we'll be adding at the beginning of next year on the rail side. Really important that is symbolically and in a real sense a way for us to tell the general public this is what's important for the quality of our system, and you really can't manage what you don't measure, and we want to do that out in the open. Major consultation efforts during the course of the year. We've held some 53 public open houses, 34 stakeholder workshops, 14 community events and pop-up and outreach events, and engaged with over 40,000 citizens and customers through surveys, largely over the internet. Phase 3 of our transit fare review just closed. We got very good feedback, very good participation on that program as well. Again, illustrating how very important it is for us to be out in the community amongst our customers and the general public. And lastly, I think something that our community affairs folks are very proud of, that we held TransLink held its first ever first in-language consultation in Cantonese in Richmond earlier this year as part of the Southwest Area Transportation Plan, and we expect to do more of that in the coming year. So in closing, we got a lot done in 2017. We are not resting on our laurels. We have a lot more to do. I certainly want to thank all of the TransLink employees throughout the enterprise for helping make all of these projects that I mentioned successful, and we have so much more to do next year. These are the three areas. They remain our overall broad strategic goals for the organization. So, Madam Chair, that's a short summary.
You went way over your time, I just want to point out. Thank you very much, Kevin. I think it's an excellent report, and it just speaks to the breadth and depth of this organization. It continues to astound me, the work that the individuals here at TransLink do on a daily basis. And I can tell you, when you start as a new board member, there's just a lot of things to be learning as we learn about this organization. So thank you. Any questions for Kevin in regards to his report before we move on? Okay, well, thank you. So Vivian King is going to come up and give us a report on BC Rapid Transit Company. I know. Welcome, Vivian. Hi, we're good.
Put the red light on and we'll be right. Thank you. Well, thank you. I have a number of things that I'd like to share with the board today. As usual, I usually go through our performance, and I'll do that very briefly. I also want to give a bit of background on the delay that we had in November the 3rd and some of the things that we discovered and learnt and what we're applying. And then thirdly, I know that I've been asked a very interesting question about extending SkyTrain services into later hours of the evening. And so I'd like to share with the board the approach that I'm going to take to make sure that we have the right facts in front of us to understand the trade-offs that they may present to us, and so that we can make very good decisions in the future for the community. So I'll start off firstly with our performance. And I'm pleased to say that, outside of one of our indicators by a 0.1, we have met our targets. So I sort of won't go into there unless there are any other questions. State of good repair. Kevin made a comment that it's one of our key areas that we look into. And of course, with a railway, it's all about our safety and reliability. So state of good repair is something that is just inherent in everything we do, everything we talk about. And we've got some major programs that we're running at the moment, and I'm very pleased to report that the two at the top have been now completed. And I also wanted to just highlight, at our last report, we talked about the increasing complaints around noise and the noise that was happening in the Evergreen area. I thought that it would be very good to show that we have actually addressed that issue. We will continue to monitor it, and there are more things that are going to be done through a study that I know that Senny Zane and his department are doing on behalf of everyone. So we keep a really close eye on any complaints about the system, whether it be noise, timing or what have you. But this particular one I thought was very topical, and I wanted to report that we are making really good progress and we're keeping a close eye on it. So we also have a number of other things that we're doing, because state of good repair is not just about the completed project, it's about the ones that we continue. So the turnouts, which are very large parts of equipment, and there's a picture down there on the right hand side that shows you a turnout. It's a very heavy piece of equipment. It's made of rail. My engineer could probably tell me how much that actually weighs, but it takes a long time to cut out one of these and put it back in. So I'm really pleased to say that we've been able to do 2 of those in Q3. And there are other areas there that we've been looking at as well. So as state of good repair, we always look at right across our asset, and we have to schedule how we're going to be doing that. And of course, grinding will continue to be something that we do. It's a maintenance activity, and we'll never stop grinding the rail, because that helps us be able to maintain the profiles and therefore hopefully keep the noise down of a railway, a natural noise of a railway. Winter preparedness. Of course, we sort of looked at last year, and everyone told me that it doesn't really snow very much in Vancouver. Well, I tell you, my first year here, I learnt to run a railway in the winter with some very good advice from some key people that help us run our railway. So, of course, we were very keen to make sure that we were prepared for this year, no matter what was put in front of us. So I won't jinx the weather. I'm just pleased to say that we are very prepared for the weather. But that then leads on to my next slide. On November the 3rd was the first snowfall of the year, and we happened to have a disruption in our morning services. I know that I answered a number of questions. Was this caused by the little bit of snow that we had in Vancouver? I can categorically tell you, no, it was not. Even though it was very untimely, and we had the 2 incidents. So basically what I wanted to share was that the reasons for those delays, and you can see in the summary on the slide there that we had 2 concurrent events. One was that we had a piece of equipment on a train that came loose and dropped into the network, and it cut a communication cable. That was repaired, and we believed that within about 45 minutes we would have the service back up and running. Unfortunately, because of that incident, we had a train that, the simplest way to say is run out of battery power. And because we have a battery power on our train, and they will run for a certain amount of time, and when they hit a particular part of the network, the train ceased working. Now, we want our service to do this because it's called fail-safe, and I think I've explained that before, that because we have an automatic system, when something goes wrong, it stops, because it's the safest way to do it. And any engineer will tell me that fail-safe is how they design systems. So our system operated and acted in the way we would expect it to. So I always like to reinforce that, because I don't want anyone to think that there is any unsafe element on the system. In doing that, we had a number of obviously customer complaints. I have stressed very strongly in the past, and I continue to stress, that we do not want to interrupt our customers' journeys. I take it personally. Actually, in this circumstance, I read the complaints that we received, and I personally responded to each of those people that had asked for a response. I think it was about 24 letters. And I have to say, our customers were really great. I think sometimes they think we don't care. And maybe that we don't really respond in the way they would expect us to. And often when you contact those people, they do understand there are very caring, very committed people that run this railway. And that's not just me. I have people that deliver every single day really, really well. But unfortunately, it's these delays that bring the attention to what's happening. This is just a map, and I wanted to say that the reason that it was so complex on that morning is because it hit most of the railway except for the Millennium line. And so we were able to keep people moving there, but we put bus bridges in. We had to move people back and forwards, and one of the things we've learnt is we often try to do everything for everybody at that time. And so if we can simplify the way that we respond to some of the timetabling and moving of trains, we may make it simpler for communication. Because one of the things about delays on a railway is they will happen. My job is to make sure that we minimise why they happen and get to the root cause. And then if they do happen, to make sure we communicate really effectively and respond as quickly as possible to get back to service. So one of the things that we, from feedback from customers and from our own staff, it was we had a very complex operating plan that we were trying to integrate across busing. We had, our transit officers came out and helped us once again for communication, but it was very complex. And so we're learning from that. We have completed a number of actions already. We immediately go out and check equipment when we find out there's an issue. If something's happened, so our trains were inspected, our rail was inspected, our communication lines were inspected. But we've also had a number of debriefs across the organisation and the enterprise as a whole. So transit officers, communication groups, our busing and our train people all got together and said, can we do this better? what did we learn? And so there's some of the things there that, you know, we need to strengthen some of the communication links. We need to simplify the operations plan. We need to make things consistent and easy to deliver so that people can go into an automatic mode and respond to things that happen. One of the things that as a head of an operation, you often say, well, how many times has this happened in the last 5 years? How many times has it happened in the last year? How many times is this the same piece of equipment that I heard about last year? And so with my team, we've been digging down into some data that we have within the organisation and bringing it back up into the light, if I can say that. Is the old expression, I think Kevin used it in the sense of saying, you know, you can't manage what you can't measure. And it's a management 101, but it is so true. And so what we've started to do is really bring to the attention of the management team and the executive team of just what are happening with delays. Because we can get the system back and running after a delay, it's back to the 90 seconds. And so when you start to look at the statistics that we have, we've started to measure things that have delays from 16 minutes to 30 minutes and a delay of 30 minutes plus. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the system has stopped completely, but we have delayed our customers. And so we're trying to understand what's causing those delays. So, you know, you can see in these high-level statistics, you've got some vehicle, passenger and system. And so what we're doing now is we're digging down into that. Vehicle can be as simple as a door failure. And so we've delayed, and it's taken that time to reset it, and so we've caused 16-minute delay. Or it could be, we use an expression, time out, which means we have to go and do a diagnostic because we may not know what it is, and that may take longer. So that can be all the vehicle sort of stuff. What we've also been able to look at is our delays in the area of 30 minutes and the 16 to 30 has increased over the last year from last year. That's not good, and we're digging down to find out why. One of the things that I said when I first came here, and I continue to say, is we do have an ageing system. Some of our Expo line is 32 years old. We have fantastic plans to upgrade and to replace our assets. We are investing in an appropriate way to do that. We have new trains coming in, which I'm very excited about. But while we do all of that, we still have an ageing system which we need to work through. My head engineer is already putting a team together to look at the switch failures that we've been having. We often get into those failures before anybody even knows about them. So we can be proactive at times, but at other times it will catch up to us. So what I'm committing to the board and to the community and to our customers is we will make ourselves more accountable in the sense of making our indicators visible. So from next year, we will be reporting our delays in the 3 categories to help people understand what we're doing. Now, why we dig into this information and why things are still, you know, we're putting in new programs and we're changing and modernising the way we maintain this railway, some of those numbers might go up. I'm going to work really hard with my team to try and keep them down. But I want to be realistic, and we will work very hard to make sure we have a safe, reliable service, a system that provides the performance levels that is expected of us. So this is our first go at putting this up on the accountability, and my team are very committed and working very hard to understand what's causing it so we can be more proactive. So that's where I am in the delay from the November the 3rd. So we're still continuing our work. We do understand what caused it. We have investigated, and we have sort of examined our network. So we are not a fear of that happening because of a systemic failure. It's been corrected as far as we understand. But I think what it has highlighted for us is putting this up helps us really focus on those areas that affect our customer as well as our staff in managing it. So I'd like to move on to the final topic in my presentation, which is a request that was made of me within about, I think, 3 weeks of my tenure. And Kevin rang me up and he said, look, I've had one of the mayors say, can we extend our services night time? I think, Mayor Gregor, it may have been you. My response...
Maybe, Gregor?
just thought I'd be polite. You know, at that time I was drinking through a fire hose. I think Kevin may have as well. And I just went to Kevin with the detail that my staff had given me because they had looked at it previously. And I said, wow, I don't even know how this railway works yet, let alone how we maintain it. Can we buy some time? Which I've now been focusing on, you know, our state of good repair, you know, the services that we're actually providing, our customer experience. And it has always been on my list to come back to. But it has been raised again. And so when Kevin rang me and said, Vivian, we're having that request again, I said, it's time we do a proper study. Now, I could ask every one of my very, very capable senior staff and the engineers that I have and say, how could we do this? But it'll be their opinion and their experience that will come to the forefront. There are many railways around the world that are actually doing this, but some of them have taken 5 years to get there. Some of them have had to implement different types of methodologies for maintenance. Some of them have had to invest in new technologies, so you know, remote monitoring of assets, the condition of assets. And they've had to increase their security or they've had to change their staff model. There are a number of trade-offs that are required to extend any type of service when you're eating into a maintenance window. So through some discussions, it's been agreed that we will commission a study. That study will include things about how other organisations have done it, what it took to do that. You know, were they similar, like the apples for apples? So are they automated systems in the way we are? You know, have they just been built? So Dubai, for example, everything's automatic. You sit in a room and you watch it and you're told whenever a switch is out or all sorts of things, but it's new. And so their maintenance regime is going to be different to what ours is today. So an ageing system, we still have to get out there and we still have to touch things a lot more than maybe a very modern system that runs, you know, 9 or 10 kilometres, maybe 20 kilometres. So that's our commitment. We're just in the process of finalising the scope. I'm hoping that we can get that out in the next few weeks. Christmas is upon us. It's not an excuse, but you know, it makes it a little bit more difficult to get things to market. And so what I'm committing to the board is that, you know, I want to come back in maybe, you know, the February time and advise where we're up to with that and, you know, who's helping us do that, with an objective, if all goes well, mid next year to be able to come and say, this is what we've learned, these are the trade-offs. And they will come with trade-offs. It's either investment, or it's, you know, customers, we might say to them, you know, we might close part of the system at 9 p.m. and provide buses instead. But we have to look at all the options. And there are two trade-offs as the head of the rail group that I would not want to trade off, and that is safety and reliability. And I'm sure you would not want me to do that either. So we need to take all of this into a single story. We need to understand what it takes, and we need to have some very good conversations about what we invest in and how we move forward. We also, this is not just a rail or a TransLink discussion, it's obviously about the community. It's about business community, it's about the general community, and I know that there are, my colleagues in TransLink are putting together or going through a process of, you know, a stakeholder consultation. So I'm sure as we go into the new year, we'll be able to talk a little bit more about how that's going to work and how we're sort of gathering that information. So really, you know, I end up with saying we are committed to providing the right service for the region. I have no problem with extending my services if we can do it safely, reliably, and it's the right decision to be made, and I would be seeking that advice. And we can work together to make sure we understand what that would take. So really, that's where I'd like to leave it and make sure that I continue a safe and reliable service for all.
Thank you, Vivian. Are there any questions for Vivian in regards to her report? Larry and then Gregor.
Mary.
Oh, Murray, sorry. I do this all the time when you're sitting next to each other. I apologize, Murray.
No problem. Thanks, Lorraine. Vivian, with respect to the failure that occurred on November 3rd, the piece that fell off the vehicle, was that related to aging and fatigue, or was it related to it not being fastened on properly, or what did you find out in that regard?
Basically, it was something being slightly out of alignment, and it can be wear and tear. And it is unusual that we had the rail slightly out of, and I'm talking like tiny millimetres. With this piece just hanging that little bit, the rail up that little bit, it happened to hit. And that's what, and it's what they call frangible, so it's made to drop off, because if we don't have frangibility, we rip things to pieces. And it would have been the angle that it came off is why it sliced the piece of the... I know that the engineering group have been through. They've checked all the tightness of what holds this on. They've gone out and checked each of those parts of the rail to make sure that the tolerance is correct. And it was the one and only that we found on the system. So they've gone through and made sure that there's no more movement.
So I guess I'm interpolating a bit from what you're saying that in relation to maintenance practices, there wasn't any flaw in the way that we were monitoring those tolerances.
We do monitor those tolerances. This one just happened to be the two bits coming together.
Right.
And so occasionally that will happen, Murray, where we have hundreds of thousands of parts on the network, and that's why we have tolerances, and they do measure them, they do go out. Right. But this was two pieces together that came and did that. But we have, we're very aware now that that's possible, and the guys are much more maybe just that little bit more aware.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Gregor?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks, Vivian, for the update, and a big thanks to you and your team through our CEO here for making this commitment to look into late night transit. I know we've heard lots of concerns over the years about safety in the downtown, people not being able to get out of the downtown late at night, and people working late shifts not being able to get home late at night as well. So. Absolutely agree, we can't compromise on safety and reliability, but hopeful that taking a fresh look and reassessing how the late night maintenance gets done, maybe there's an opportunity for a win-win here. And some of the issues related to breakdowns, there's a new light that's shone on ways to go about it that perhaps some other cities have discovered in terms of shifting their maintenance so that they do have late night transit as well. But if you could just take one brief minute, I know our timing's tight, but obviously there are trade-offs that have prevented this from happening in the past, and if you could just outline a couple of those key pieces. I know for the community consultation is a really important piece of this, but the realities of running trains and keeping them running safely is paramount. And if you could just speak to the trade-offs that you're going to have to work through with the team and outside advisors.
Yeah. Because I've been responsible for maintenance of a very large railway, which was about 3,000 kilometres of rail, we had to have a whole sequencing of when we could take a part of that railway system versus when you couldn't, because of the interaction between them. I've actually been out in our system here where we try to provide a continuous service with a very small window. So, we're used to 90-second services. Even at night, we only have a few minutes between services. So we tend to bring trains in and ferry them back and forwards and change people out at platforms. It could be in the future that, when you extend services, they won't be 90 seconds or 5 minutes apart. They might be 10 or 15 minutes apart. So that's one thing that you've got to look at in the sense of service. As for the maintenance side of it, it will be how often we need to get in there. Okay, so when we do inspections, we do a lot of our inspections manually. So you're talking about human beings walking on a track in height at night in the dark. And so you cannot speed that up. How do other people come over it? Is that they will put remote condition monitoring. It doesn't get rid of all physical inspections, but it can help with not having as many, because you can monitor your network. You can change the nighttime service during, say, a Monday to a Thursday. And as I suggested, you might cut the service early. and I don't know what the time is, so I'm only just picking a number here. It might be 10 p.m. And so we need, to take those hours from when we extend and put them somewhere else. But at the same time, we've got to make sure that we have enough time to actually do the work, because what happens is you're mobilising and demobilising takes time. And that's why we sort of, I think my engineers and maintenance people have a heart attack every time I talk about this, because they know that their longest window is about 4 hours. That 4 hours is sort of coming in and setting up. They might only get 2 hours, because depending on the equipment they have to bring in. Now they try to be very efficient and bring it in, in the afternoon if they can, but it's a real balancing act. So what happens is we take the system, we need to put alternative transport on. So one of the things that is a real benefit for us is we now have the compass data coming in. So looking at that analysis and saying, well, you know what, actually on a Sunday afternoon, there's not a lot of people that move around on this line. I'm guessing. And so would everybody be prepared to say, okay, Sunday afternoon, we're not going to run trains in that direction. And we're going to take that whole, and we're going to have 7 hours or 8 hours or 9. So they're the sort of trade-offs that we have to look at. The time, the alternative transport, the people that are there. But I also rang London. I luckily I have a very broad network, and I spoke to the Chief Operating Officer of London Underground. And he shared with me that it took them 5 years to roll out their night tube, as they call it. They did 1 line at a time. They have 10 lines, I think it is, and they're only running this at 5. They had to put extra security on, which cost. They had to lock down different parts of the network because they didn't want people wandering through it overnight. They had to change their staffing model. And so, of course that comes with cost, time, risk. So they're the sort of trade-offs that we've, let alone we have a workforce that we have a CBA, an agreement with the unions. Would we need to change the shifts? And that's a lot of consultation. We'd have to do that properly. I don't want to sound like it's too hard, but I'd love to be, to leave the board with the realism of what it is that we need to address when we go down this road. Mm-hmm. But let's do the study. Let's find out what it's all about and be able to really articulate what those trade-offs might be. Mm-hmm. Gregor.
Okay, much appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Vivian, for a great presentation and the reality check of the depth of information that we need to make these kinds of decisions. As you go about this study in terms of what would it look like for SkyTrain, I think a lot of the issues are around how do people get out of the entertainment district and back to their homes. Are you also looking at, or will the study also be looking at alternatives? So for instance, we piloted the van pool this year. Would that be included in your analysis as well as SkyTrain? Or are you limiting to this is what it would look like for SkyTrain to be expanded, and this is what it would take for us to do that?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, ma'am, because I was just speaking with Jeff this morning, Jeff Cross, who is our planner, and we know that
he's our magician.
Magician. I thought I was the miracle.
When he comes up, I'm going to refer to him as the magician.
But yes, to answer your question, we know this is a much broader question. So Jeff and I have been talking, the scope will be expanded to take on the broader, because it really is, there's a question being asked, let's look at what alternatives there are, but at the same time we do need to look at the SkyTrain. So the person that's pulling together the scope for us, that we're informing, Jeff's team is also part of that, and we will have that broader scope to answer those questions as well.
And as well, Mayor Hepner, the other element that Vivian was talking about was gathering a group of stakeholders as well, and talk about, more broadly, where's the taxi cab industry, the extent to which the province is expected to bring forth recommendations for ride sharing and so forth. So I think we need to look at a lot of different elements of this transportation and, to a certain degree, social and commercial challenge, in the entertainment district in Vancouver. So there is the specific technical work that Vivian spoke about, but I think there's also gathering that input from a variety of stakeholders as well. And I think that's going to be an important part of the exercise and the journey we can take this issue.
Thank you. Anne?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't want to go uncommented on your commitment to safety in the incident that you reported about. Nothing is worth getting people hurt for. Thank you for that. And also, I think your safety goals and attainment are excellent, both for user safety and for worker safety. And I don't think we should take that for granted. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It is a journey that we are on. It's something that, we have safety audits happening, or we've had safety audits happening. There are, some processes and procedures that we certainly need to work on. We're looking at a new safety campaign to raise the awareness of our staff. And we know that over the years we have to sort of, build on our safety culture. That is something that, is very much in the forefront for my team and I. But we still have some work to do. So thank you for the acknowledgement.
I know you can never take it for granted, but I want to make sure we don't take it for granted either. Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Vivian, one more question from Tony.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Vivian, thank you for your report. Just a quick question on the grinding. I just wasn't sure when I read through it. Is the grinding actually done at night? And is the grinding itself causing the noise complaints?
So, no, there's a combination.
Yeah.
So now that we're sort of digging into our data, because we have this performance reporting unit which allows us to do this now, what we find is there is an increase in complaints when we are grinding. One of the things that we need to do better, and we are starting to do that, is inform people that we're about to grind and why and what it means. So that's going to be, I think that will make a big difference. But generally, I think it's a combination. So when the noise increases because of the cycle that we will use, you will get complaints. Particularly the one in the Evergreen Tunnel was unusual, and our guys have been doing some investigation on that because it got loud very quick. We went and corrected it, but we need to understand why that happened. And I know that they've got a report for me to review on that. So I think it's a combination, but if we can manage expectations by helping people understand we're on the railway, we are working tonight, I think most people are considerate of that and will understand.
Yeah, especially if there are benefits of less noise, obviously.
True, very true.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're good. All right. Thank you, Vivian. And now I'd like to invite Dan Zavisky up from Coast Mountain Bus Company to give a report on behalf of Hayden, who's not with us today. So welcome, Dan.
Very much. I have a brief update presentation on 5 items. 2:45. And where are we? 2:32. Our double-decker trial started officially on November 24th after the event on the 16th. Oh, sorry, didn't realize it had been turned off. Thank you. Once completed, the double-decker buses will have operated on 7 highway routes normally served by our Orion coaches. The double-deckers offer a smooth, comfortable ride for customers with lots of big, bright windows. We're looking forward to testing the buses and gathering feedback from our customers and employees. Ambassadors are regularly on the buses to answer questions, share information, and encourage customers to complete the online survey. TransLink street teams are also at key bus exchanges and on peak days and times to help build excitement and let customers know about the buses. The initial feedback on social media has been extremely positive. We're able to tell customers when the buses will be on specific routes so that if they want to ride on the double-decker, they can before the trial concludes in March 2018. To help us make a decision about the future of the double-deckers in our fleet, a midterm report will be put together to give us a sense of how the trial is going. A total of 206,000 service hours were added to the bus system this year as part of our work to deliver on the 10-year vision. To meet this demand, we held on to select buses that were scheduled to be retired, and we will keep them in service until the new expansion buses arrive. While conventional buses typically are taken out of service after 17 years, or about 1.2 million kilometers, we've been able to extend the life of these buses for 2 to 3 years. Today, we are operating 259 buses due and overdue for replacement to meet our regular and expansion service. Similar to older cars, the downside of keeping these older buses is the increased maintenance costs. These buses require more labor hours per service kilometer than the rest of the fleet. Electrical, body, and engine issues are the most frequent repairs. With the buses that we currently have on order, the majority of the old buses will be removed from service by the end of March 2019.
Dan, before you leave that slide, can you just tell us what depot that is and how many depots like this we have?
So this is a picture of opening day for the Vancouver Transit Center in September of 2016. The detail doesn't show, but many of the very old trolleys are what you are seeing in the foreground there. So, and Vancouver is our biggest transit center by far. It's pretty much double the size of most other transit centers. We have 6 operating centers today.
6 in total. Okay, thank you.
In 2009, with growing awareness of the importance of reducing our fuel consumption and the availability of improved technology, 180 hybrid buses were introduced into the fleet. Now 8 years old, these buses have started hitting the replacement threshold of the hybrid drive batteries, which we've been closely monitoring for the last 2 years. The batteries in these buses are designed to last 120,000 amp hours, and by year end we will have replaced 45 battery packs. Over the next 2 years, we anticipate the other 135 hybrid buses will require battery replacements. An agreement has been put in place with a local vendor to supply new and improved batteries. These new batteries are a lithium-ion battery that exceed the OEM battery specs and will last the remaining life of the vehicle. Kevin mentioned the tire socks earlier. Here we have a picture of a bus as we were testing up on Seymour. Fortunately, they got some snow recently. They are a fabric winter traction device that slips over the rear tires. The advantage of these devices is that they don't do any harm to the vehicle or to the road. So we performed traction and braking testing in snowy conditions on Mount Seymour, and the results were very promising. The bus that you see in the picture there was actually able to drag one of our service trucks with its brakes locked on, and was still able to proceed up the hill. So the next step for us is actually operational testing. This will be done, as Kevin mentioned, on Burnaby Mountain, going up to SFU, and we will be closely monitoring the performance of the tire socks during this service.
What about coming down the hills?
The braking aspects were also greatly improved. With buses, the majority of the braking force actually comes from the rear axle, not the front, which is the opposite from most cars. Lastly, we have some pictures of the additional C-Bus. Kevin mentioned earlier, it is being built in the Netherlands right now by the Damen Shipyard Group. Once in service, the new C-Bus will allow us to increase service frequency to every 10 minutes during peak hours. And the new vessel is part of the 10-year vision and is funded in partnership with the federal government. The first significant event in a vessel's life is the keel laying ceremony, which was held just this last Tuesday at the shipyard. And as part of that ceremony, a Canada 150 coin was welded into the keel for good luck.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so the next ceremony is the vessel launch, which is in September of 2018.
Great, thank you. So I have Anne first and then Marcella.
I'm pretty excited about. I'm pretty excited about getting those buses up and down from SFU in the snow, and I'm almost hoping for some snow so we can get a chance to test them. Although don't tell me, but I'm just curious. The Kevlar socks that you've been talking about, are they single use and are they recyclable?
They can be used many times as long as they don't get damaged during operations. So they can tear, and this is one of the reasons for doing the field testing and getting the operational aspects in there. It's the transitioning. When you're just on snow, everything is good, but when you transition from snow to bare road.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So,
Tire chains also break too, so
Yeah.
it's,
Yes.
whether it's change or socks.
Yeah. And Marcella?
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin, for your report. Just a couple questions. One question and a comment. In the report, you talked about there potentially not being sufficient clearance for the double-deckers in a few spots. And so when that happens, are you changing the route? Because you can't, as I understood from your report, you can't immediately adjust the hydro lines for various reasons. So are you just going around them, or are you, what are you doing about that?
So we are working with the municipality, BC Hydro, TELUS, there's several companies involved here to raise those wires. And we have a couple of critical areas. The 601 route is the route right now. And what we've done is we've actually moved the 601 route to the latter stages of the pilot project. And we're working with the agencies to try and get the wires raised so that there is no safety concern.
So when you find a barrier, you're just you're setting aside that particular service, working on the other services until you can get that raised.
To date, the 601 route is the only route that we've found this issue on.
Okay, thank you. My comment is not that I often take any of the night buses out of the entertainment area, but when I do, which happens to be quite often the last little while, I just want to comment that I am so impressed with the drivers who let any kid on in any state with no money and no tap, no matter what these kids say or do. Just, they let them on all the time. They treat them with respect. They get them home safely. There was a gaggle of kids who, in a certain condition, all wanted to get off at a certain stop in order to go continuing partying at another spot. And the driver just forgot to stop and managed to just take them home. There was a pole dancer. And the drivers treat them all with respect, kindness, and deliver them home. And with all this, everybody says thank you. So I just want to acknowledge the drivers, and I hope you can pass that on in some way to the drivers to thank them for their service, at least on the night buses.
I will certainly pass your comments along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan, very much. Appreciate it. All right, I'd like to invite Doug Lepard, our Chief Officer, up. And after this report, we will be taking a short break, and then we'll be resuming shortly after. So welcome, Doug. Nice to see you. Pressure's on you, exactly. No, there's no pressure at all.
Okay, well, hello everyone. I just have 5 minutes on the schedule, so I will be brief. Hopefully the slides working. So I just want to talk a little bit about safety and customer service. The entire enterprise is focused on providing excellent service, and everything we do, we try to complement that goal as well. We disseminate a lot of information through various different strategies to get to people about safety on the transit system and how to report if they have problems. And then, of course, we're focused on providing an excellent response to them if they do, in the unlikely event that they do have problems. For example, there are some communities, though, that are maybe less aware of how to report and what their rights are and that sort of thing. So we've been trying to do outreach to at-risk groups. Picture's kind of dark. Well, the one on the right is better. There you can see Constable Shiraz Hanif, who has been going out to all the mosques in the Lower Mainland. And we've formed a partnership with the Provincial Hate Crimes Unit to target communities that may feel that they're more likely to be harassed or at risk, and to talk to them about transit safety, and to give them the confidence to know that if they have problems that they are going to get a response and it is going to be investigated thoroughly, and that we are focused on keeping them safe. I bring this up just because that's me down at the end of the table there. I was meeting with the elders from the Raw Street Temple, and kudos are being passed around to the operators of buses. The gentleman that's seated in a very dark sweater, kind of kitty corner to me, is a bus operator named Paul Biesla, who happens to be on the executive of the Raw Street Temple, and a very impressive young guy who was my interpreter that day, and being a bus operator was also able to talk a lot about issues of safety on the buses and so on. So we do a lot of that. Our neighborhood police officers do it. We're all involved to one extent or another in making sure that people, particularly those at risk, youth, students, seniors, and so on, have information about how to report problems and how to keep themselves safe. And again, to build confidence in them that they are going to get an excellent response from us. Bike theft, as you probably know, the more people that are riding bikes, which is a good thing, the more problems we have around bike thefts. We partnered with TransLink to do some bike theft prevention, bike ID registry. We partnered with Transit Security. We've both got members that are trained on doing bike patrols, and so we will patrol with each other around bus loops and stations and that sort of thing, looking for disorder problems, help keep people safe, and also to deal with the problem of bike theft. System resilience, obviously, you know, this is a low frequency event, but we did just have another attack in a transportation system in New York this week. That is a reality for urban transportation systems and mass transportation systems around the world. So we do focus, we do take our responsibility around keeping people safe seriously. We have explosives detection dog teams that do sweeps, look for unattended packages. Just last week we had a report from system staff that there was a suspicious metal box left in a station. We were able to immediately deploy, determine that it was not, in fact, suspicious, avoided any delay or shutdown of the system by waiting, for example, for the RCMP bomb squad, wherever they might be, to make that package safe or so on. So, you know, we're very focused on being resilient, providing good service, and making sure that the system stays running. And so lots of training and joint exercises with transit and police partners. For example, a tabletop exercise that we repeated twice just in the last month, and that is in preparation for a live exercise that we will do with system staff and jurisdictional police early next year, spring of next year. We are very much a performance metrics-driven organization. I'm sure that you've heard of ComStat, which was started in the NYPD. We have our own version called Command Accountability Report. We meet monthly to look at a wide variety of performance metrics, not just around crime, but around our financial operating status, human resources issues such as time lost to injuries or sickness, hiring, all kinds of dozens and dozens of different metrics we look at, and then look at strategies when there's a pattern or a trend to how to make things better. Kevin has been, I think, a couple of times to see what we're doing there, and we're very proud of that process. Here's an example of one of the ones we look at, and you can just see the impact of the new fare, the Faregate regulation. So that came in last year. The blue is offenses to do with abusing the fare gates. So you can see the impact that it's had on the transit safety and conduct regulation overall. And there are others, violations built in there as well, like liquor in possession, that sort of thing. Anything that we would write a provincial violation ticket. So the interesting thing about the Faregate violations and that new power, it's a powerful tool for us because they don't have to be in the fare paid zone. They can be the people jumping out of the fare paid zone without having paid their fare. But as I've told you before, these are the people that are causing disorder and problems and committing crimes on the system. And very often they are people who are breaching conditions that have been imposed by courts, or they're wanted on arrest warrants. And so we're able to remove them from the system, keep people riding the system safer and contributing to safety in the region generally. Just talk to you a little bit about arrests we make. Obviously that is a core function of a police agency, and we make basically two types of arrests. You can see the bigger slice of the pie on the left there is warrant arrest. A perfect example of that would be the person that was in the news recently because he was inadvertently released from Surrey pretrial. He was actually a well-known armed robber. There were several Canada-wide warrants out for him for armed robbery. It was obviously unfortunate that he was released from the pretrial center. An armed robbery occurred in Burnaby near the Lougheed station last week, and description is broadcast. We were monitoring that. Officers at the Lougheed station were looking for him and spotted him and arrested him. So that was a dangerous criminal that we were able to quickly arrest, and that is typical of when we're checking people that are creating disorder and problems, or they're on the run from something that's just occurred. We are staged across the system, and our officers, like all good beat officers, are very, very good at spotting this, and with all of them having smartphones, we're able to quickly get information and photographs and that sort of thing out. And in fact, on Sunday night, which you would think would be a slower night, one of our squads set a squad record for executing 11 arrest warrants in a 6-hour period. So that was a good night for them. The other type of arrest that we make is for new offenses that occur, for a wide variety of offenses. And no doubt you heard about the attack on the young Muslim woman on the Canada line. The fact, again, that we were staged across the system, as soon as that offense was reported, we were able to get a description to system staff, who are then looking for him on the cameras, spotted him heading for Richmond. We had officers there, and we were able to quickly make that arrest before he'd ever even left the system. And he's now charged with multiple offenses, including threatening, assault, and sexual assault. So that's another example of that. And this last slide is just another example of some of the metrics that we track, and I bring it up because we track not only the absolute number of crimes that are occurring on the system that are being reported to us or that we are observing, but also what the rate per boarded passenger. That's kind of our crime rate. A municipality would look at their population and compare it to the number of crimes, and we look at the number of boarded passengers and look at the crimes that are occurring. So the good news is that in 2017, crimes against people, so violent crimes, has gone down somewhat. A little bit of an uptick in property crime that we're seeing around Metro Vancouver, but it is a good news story. The absolute number of crimes against people has gone down, and when you look at it as a rate, considering the increase in ridership, it's even more impressive. I will stop there.
Great. Thank you, Doug. Anne has a question for you.
Thank you for your report. Just returning to the recent incident involving the young woman on the system, one of the issues that it brought up was bystander response or non-response. And, and I know it's situation specific, but in general, what advice do you give to bystanders who witness an event unfolding on or near our system?
Yeah, good question. I'm actually quite surprised that there was only one person. We don't expect people to intervene, especially when we're dealing with someone that is violent or might appear mentally or whatever. We don't expect people to put themselves at risk. But we do actually expect that they will hit the yellow strip, that they will use our text code, which we get thousands of calls on, and I'm surprised because it's a very unobtrusive way of reporting without actually being on the phone and dialing 911, that we did not have someone that was texting us telling that there was a problem. So we're constantly trying to encourage that. We appreciate the cooperation from TransLink and the Compass people, that we actually have our text number now on the back of every Compass card, and we're looking for other opportunities to get that information out there that, look, this is a way that you can report without being obvious, and we do get a lot of reports on that. I was surprised that we didn't get one, and actually the first report came from the woman herself, who was waiting for us to attend when she called.
Thank you. So it's important to get that message out and keep reinforcing it then.
Absolutely, and we're looking at different strategies. We've got some great input from, we have something called Transit Chiefs Community Council, and we have various representatives, and that actually, the suggestion to put the number on the back of the Compass card came from one of those citizens that attends that meeting from, actually from the Women's Sexual Assault Center, and we've got some other ideas about how we get that out to like big institutions and corporations that are using the transit system, whose employees are using the transit system. But that's one of the things that we constantly talk about when we meet with citizens groups and students and so on.
Thank you.
Yes, Tony.
Thanks for your report, Doug. In your report, you have a chart that sort of summarizes the reported sex offenses, and it looks at the solved or cleared rate, and a really good trend. It's gone from 64% to 72%. I'm just trying to understand, like, what's a reasonable percentage? Because 72 seems kind of high in terms of.
So it is very high, and that's actually was some more information that I wanted to excise out of there, because there's sort of an allusion to comparing to the provincial solve rate, which I actually pulled out of the chart, because it's not our intention to say, you know, we're better than another police department or something like that. The nature of the offenses that we investigate is different. As a former sex crimes investigator, I can tell you that most sex offenses, the parties are known to each other, and the challenge is to deal with the defense of consent. And so it's not that they're proving something happened often, it's whether there was consent. In our case, you know, 100% of them basically are strangers. Consent is not an issue. The evidence is often strong because there is video everywhere. Our investigative challenge is to identify that person and then track them down and investigate it, which is why we like to be able to catch them, you know, at the time when they're still wearing the same clothing and so on. So we're proud of our solve rate, particularly considering that they are almost all strangers. But the big thing is the trend, as you've pointed out, is that was one of the things that I wanted to do better at when I arrived here. So we focused a lot of effort on that in terms of policy and training and expectations. And we are seeing the results of that, which is a higher solve rate.
Great, thank you.
And Anne has one more question for you.
Now that Tony's mentioned that chart, I found it a bit confusing because the 72% is actually floating up in the sky above the actual events.
Yeah.
So it looks like you've missed an axis, or somehow the
It's
lines...
actually because it's an incomplete year. So the number, the blue chart...
You're trending towards 72,
Yeah,
I see.
so that's where it's at right now.
Right.
But the blue bar shows is shorter than the other ones because it was not for a full year.
I think I understand.
It's my chart creator. I'll speak to him.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Doug. And I just want to say how much we appreciate your focus on safety and balance and keeping the system running. I think that, you know, that's a really important part of what we're trying to accomplish here, is to keep both parts happening. And so I found it interesting when you're talking about the dogs and how you can quickly respond to those, the issues that might be on the system, so that we can keep our system running.
And they both can be accomplished except in extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hearing no other questions, we're going to take a brief pause and have a break, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you.